Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. We've got another week done here in the market for Palantir, but very red and some days actually really bloody, as well as some apps from Palantir. They want to share that with the open source kind of stuff, news regarding more marketing, and Palantir showing their boot camps, and many more. So looking at the stock price first, we had some crazy price movement this week where we closed out at $15.07. Now, if we look at the weekly charts down around 5%, I'd say that's honestly typical volatility for a stock like Palantir and that we've experienced in the last few months. So you can see earlier in the week, we were in the high $17, almost $17 range at 1690s, but the market came right back down to settle in this $15 range. So I know we've seen the 13s in recent memory, so it'll be interesting to see if this continues on downwards or if Palantir stock has found a zone to wobble around in the 15s or maybe pops back up. Now, what was all the news happening this week? And I'll cover the videos I made first. So first video I happened upon an article that Palantir is working with Ukraine's reconstruction. So it looks to be also a way for the country to create a service for other countries when it comes to demining. The Ukrainian article mentions that 500 million euros was raised by a few European countries and that Ukraine wants to create a market for these services. So we'll see in the future if more products like this come out of Palantir's collaboration with Ukraine and if it'll become a major revenue source in the future for the country and hopefully Palantir. The intriguing part is that this almost feels like a partnership between Palantir and a government to build a national business that they can sell out and export to other governments. I mean, they've built up their reputation as coming to help in the war immediately, so why wouldn't other countries feel there's some level of expertise here since they've been there since the beginning? Then next, I covered a video released by Palantir and their work with Ferrari. The major points here are that they've been in a partnership for 6 years and still going strong. I went into 3 reasons I like this kind of trailer here since it first puts their name out there to a wider audience, which of course means the chances of exposure to actual targeted customers goes up. But also second, it seems to be a way for Palantir to establish their name around Italy and their favorite brands, concerning Italian was spoken in that video too. And then third, it just goes to show how strong these partnerships can be after being together for 6 years and still working together and learning new things. Palantir can really showcase to potential customers that they aren't just dumping a product with them, but actually building value alongside them and are in it for the long haul. I do want to note though, I don't follow F1 closely, but do know and heard that Ferrari has not been a dominant force in recent times for the sport at least. So if it's more of just a branding thing in the country of Italy versus actually making a difference in their performance, we'll just have to see. Then, I made another video on a couple subjects, the first being their blog post on their government web services, so big notes for investors that they linked their GitHub repositories for their open source stuff, so feel free to check those out. But also, they went a little more in depth on the policy bot application that they've built. So I go into a little bit more detail in the video itself, but it's just another way for development teams to integrate multiple review processes to streamline which pull requests require a closer look. I know these blog posts can get tedious sometimes, but I think Palantir is starting to shed light on the tools they've been working with internally and making them much more transparent shows they are making strides to shed that black box reputation they have, even though I personally don't think they have that. Then that same video also covered the big news that Dresner ranks Palantir as a top AI vendor at number 1. Now, if you read closely, the caveats here are that they share this number 1 spot with 3 other companies. And you can check out the visual too from the report and see that Palantir is performing well in their eyes on analytical features and functions, model operations, and usability. Now, if you take a closer look though, they seem to be lacking in neural networks, open source support, and data access. So look at that chart closely and you'll familiarize yourself with some of the names there also being compared, but the other number 1 companies you don't see in the media, so I'll need to do a little bit more research on them for myself. But still, I think it's great overall they made the list. Just remember these can be reviewed by potential customers, and it's another way to keep on building up their reputation and trustworthiness as a company because their name is just getting out there on these kind of reports. Now, here are what I've not made videos on. Rishi Sunak was starting to meet with leaders for their UK AI summit. Now, Palantir is obviously a part of this and was mentioned as a partnership, but the timing is also intriguing because Palantir will be releasing their Q3 2023 earnings the morning of November 2 pre-market. So the event itself takes place between November 1 and 2, and if it's just coincidence, who knows? But I think this is still another important event because the NHS contract is still not officially awarded or announced, and this may be additional pull if for some reason Palantir still needs to vie for the contract contract, albeit it may be more for optics and politics rather than actual testing of the software at this point. Now, for me personally, still waiting to get the official win or loss at this point regarding the NHS contract, and no one knows if this delay in reward means they win or lose the contract. It's just people's best guesses at this point. Even despite the case studies the NHS published that I made a video on last Sunday, it doesn't mean anything because politics can still make or break a contract win. Just because you have quantitative evidence of improving waiting lists and speeding up appointment times, it doesn't mean the decision makers are actually going to care to improve those, because even if it's just a little rant in the short term, people just do what they need to stay in office regardless of those who are ill-informed or well-informed going against their own interests for the long haul, just like healthcare, where it's something you don't see immediately. But that's just my take there, and of course I have my biases being an investor in Palantir. Now, Palantir continues their marketing around their AIP Boot Camps. In their latest post, they had a podcast-style looking video with Ted Mabry, who seems to be spearheading this whole initiative. He says AIP Boot Camps work because customers can solve real business problems within the first hour. Now, that's a bold claim. They don't worry about assembling the tech stack, but rather start iterating with AI immediately, and then the tooling with Palantir makes that possible. It's not about talking at the customer and kind of just presenting to them and telling them about it, but you're actually letting them work through it themselves, but probably collaboratively as well with some Palantir employees there at the demos that actually matter to them. And this is valuable. He mentions this is two-pronged because it builds their skills with using Palantir as well at the same time. Now, the more I hear about this, the AIP Bootcamp idea is really living up to what I originally thought to it when I first heard about it at AIP Con. These continue to remind potential customers of this avenue to work with Palantir firsthand. Now, if this compounds across other organizations seeing their competitors and peers attending, it may just be a side effect there and become a trend to at least give Palantir a shot. And it's also more to see if this actually translates to official customer counts in the coming quarters when they release those at earnings. But I'm all for it as a shareholder right now because sometimes it comes down to quantity and just getting in potential customers' faces about this, so just keep posting about it, Palantir, I don't mind. And the main point is that these customers won't know you to even consider you without ever hearing about you or coming upon you. So in that point, it just makes sense for them to keep going. And sneak preview for my next video, with earnings coming up this week on the morning of Thursday, November 2, I'll be going over the metrics to look out for and my expectations against their own guidance from Palantir, Wall Street's guidance, and just my general thoughts about those. But I also believe this upcoming earnings is important to start to see some level of validation that AIP is a true driver of growth for the company. Now, I'm not saying I expect them to overwhelmingly beat on guidance, especially on revenue numbers, but if they can start to get those customer numbers up or other related indicators, then that's good enough for me. But what I think is going to be more important is to look at the trend here when we get to Q4 and to Q1 2024. I know it feels like sometimes we're just pushing it off here, but with the amount of exposure that we're getting to the market with AIP, it'll be interesting to see how this overall affects the company, because not only if you just jump onto AIP, you don't get that alone, you're going to get onto Foundry possibly, and then maybe even Apollo here. So customers can keep driving up more growth over time, even if the numbers stay down in the short term. But what are your thoughts on all this news? Let me know below, and thank you all for watching and appreciate my channel members, and I'll see you in the next video.